Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with some more news and politics from around the world. We'll start off here with a story from ProPublica, how a grad student uncovered the largest known slave auction in the U.S. Lauren Davis made a stunning discovery as a graduate student at the College of Charleston in South Carolina. An ad for a slave auction larger than any historian had yet identified. The find yields a new understanding of the enormous harm of such a transaction. So, yeah, we have we still have slavery in the U.S. It's still a thing. People don't think about it, but it actually is. Sitting at her bedroom desk, nursing a cup of coffee on a quiet Tuesday morning, Lauren Davis scoured digitized old newspapers for slave auction ads. A graduate history student at the College of Charleston, she logged them on a spreadsheet for an internship assignment. It was often tedious work. She clicked on February the 24th, 1835, another in a litany of days on which slave trading fueled the home city of Charleston, South Carolina. But on this day, buried in a sea of classified ads for sales of everything from fruit knives and candlesticks to enslaved human beings, Davila made a shocking discovery. Is her name Davila? Lauren Davila. I called her Davis. On page 3, a fifth column over, 10th advertisement down, she read, "This day, the 24th instant, and the day following, at the north side of the Custom House at 11 o'clock, will be sold a very valuable gang of Negroes accustomed to the culture of rice, consisting of 600. She stared at the number 2. A sale of 600 people would mark a grim new record by far. Until Davila's discovery, the largest known slave auction in the U.S. was one that was held over 2 days in 1859 just outside Savannah, Georgia, roughly 100 miles down the Atlantic coast from Davila's home. At a racetrack just outside the city, an indebted plantation heir sold hundreds of enslaved people. The horrors of that auction have been chronicled in books and articles, including the New York Times 1619 Project and The Weeping Time, Memory, and the largest slave auction in American history. Davila grabbed her copy of the latter to double check the number of people mentioned then. It was 436, far fewer than the 600 in the ad glowing on her computer screen. She fired off an email to a mentor, Bernard Powers, the city's premier black history expert, now professor emeritus of history at the College of Charleston. He is founding director of the Center for the Study of Slavery in Charleston and the board member of the International African American Museum, which will open in Charleston on June 27th. But yeah, largest known slave auction in the U.S. So yeah, beforehand they said it was only 439 that was the largest that was known of in Savannah, but she finds an article showing 600 in Charleston. Next story we want to look at is from The Lever. Fossil fuel giant Suncor chooses shareholders over breathable air. The oil and gas firm's Colorado refinery is systematically poisoning the air while the company massively expands stock buybacks and dividends. You know, again, it's just a simple case of pure and utter greed over human dignity and decency. An oil refinery is poisoning the air in Colorado due to poor maintenance and inspection, according to a new report from federal environmental regulators. But instead of devoting money to deal with the problems, the refinery's owner, Suncor Energy, has massively increased payouts to shareholders at the urging of one of the world's largest hedge funds. The case illustrates how Wall Street's investments in fossil fuels directly threatens the health of local residents and, in particular, vulnerable populations. The Canadian oil and gas giant Suncor has made headlines in recent years for a series of chemical releases and air quality violations at its 92-year-old refinery just outside Denver. In its new report, the Environmental Protection Agency found that the problems are systemic. The Suncor Petroleum Refinery in Commerce City, Colorado may experience more air quality incidents because of the inadequacies in preventative maintenance, resting, and inspection of liquid level control systems in electrical equipment. The inadequacies persist despite repeated fines and investigations from state and federal regulators. While Suncor has failed to make basic improvements to the refinery's procedures and staffing, the company has delivered more than $12 billion to shareholders since the start of 2022. In response to aggressive pressure from Elliott Management, a hedge fund headed by the Republican megadonor and ruthless speculator Paul Singer, Suncor last year increased its stock buybacks by more than 120% to $5.1 billion and its dividends to 67% by 67% to $2.6 billion. Suncor and Elliott did not respond to the Lever's request for comment. Of course, they know it's a show of pure and utter greed, but they don't care. And yeah, I think at the beginning of this I was talking about slavery still existing. I was thinking it was talking about a modern slavery ring, but my bad on that. Anyway, this is a story from the Daily Beast. Texas ends water breaks for construction workers amid heat wave. A triple-digit Texas heat wave is drawing new attention to a law signed by Governor Greg Abbott this week, ending water break requirements for construction workers. The legislation signed Tuesday overrides cities' municipal labor rules, including those that mandate water breaks for outdoor workers. Austin and Dallas both have ordinance requiring employers to give construction workers a 10-minute water break every 4 hours. The Texas Tribune reported, Texas is the worst state for heat-related work deaths, according to the Tribune. With rising temperatures and fewer water breaks, labor leaders anticipate more workplace deaths and injuries. Last year, the state recorded at least 279 heat-related deaths. Its worst count since 1999. That Texas, quit being dickheads. Abbott, it's stupid what you're making them do, saying, nah, they can work without water in the heat. Here's a story from Capital B News. Mississippi Police Department faces a $400 million federal lawsuit for shooting man in jail. The Franklin County Sheriff's Department has a history of excessive force lawsuits. A Mississippi man who barely survived being shot in the mouth while 6 white Franklin County police officers held him and his friend during an alleged drug raid has filed a $400 million federal lawsuit. Michael Corey Jenkins, 32, and Eddie T. Parker, 35, both blacks, say their civil rights were violated on June the 24th when deputies from Rankin County Sheriff Department burst through the front door of Parker's residence, handcuffed the men, and searched for drugs. When the officers didn't find anything when they illegally entered Parker's home, they used excessive interrogation methods to coerce a confession. Their attorney, Malik Z. Shabazz, previously told Capital B. Capital B has reached out to Jason Dare, an attorney for the Sheriff's Department, for comment. 3 of the officers, including Hunter Edward, who were at the Braxton, Mississippi home, and Sheriff Ryan Bailey, were named as co-defendants in the lawsuit. Jenkins said Edward shot him in the mouth, causing severe, almost fatal injuries to his jaw and tongue, and after the ordeal, Edward filed false criminal charges against Jenkins, claiming that he pointed a gun at him first. This is one of the worst and most bizarre incidents of police misconduct in the United States history, with the egregious conduct described, Shabazz said at the press conference. For nearly 2 hours, the men were repeatedly punched, kicked, slapped, shocked with stun guns, and berated with racist comments. The officers also allegedly attempted to use a sex toy to rape Jenkins and Parker, according to the lawsuit. When the officers weren't able to commit the sexual assault against Jenkins because he defecated on himself in a very juvenile and bizarre manner, the officers laughed, threw eggs at the men, and force them to strip naked and shower together, according to the lawsuit. It's ridiculous. But we know police still get away with a lot of stuff, despite what we've learned just over the last decade or so. This is from Pravda. Kremlin decides that goal to demilitarize Ukraine has largely been achieved. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary for the Russian dictator, has said that the task of the aggressor country on the so-called militarization of Ukraine has allegedly been largely fulfilled. Peskov, in an interview with RT Arabic, according to TASS propaganda news agency. Indeed, Ukraine was heavily militarized at the time of the beginning of its special military operation, as the Russian Federation calls the war against Ukraine. And as Russian President Vladimir Putin said yesterday, one of the tasks was to demilitarize Ukraine. In fact, this task is largely completed. Ukraine is using less and less of its weapons, and more it uses the weapon systems that Western countries supply it with. You couldn't just talk, communicate. No, you had to invade. You couldn't negotiate, couldn't talk. Nah, I want Ukraine as part of Russia back. Propaganda ass bullshit. This is from The Guardian. Indian court halts airing a documentary on Muslim minority. An Indian court has blocked the screening of an Al Jazeera documentary about the country's Muslim minority, fueling fears that the right to criticize the government is being eroded. The Allahabad High Court was acting on a public interest petition filed by Sudhir Kumar, an activist who said that he learned from media reports that the documentary Who Lit the Fuse portrayed India's 172 Muslims as living in fear of the Narendra Modi government. He also alleged that it showed state agencies acting against the interests of Muslims. On this basis, Kumar argued, the documentary should not be broadcast as it would disrupt social harmony. Social harmony does not matter if it's brought about by underhanded and false means. It's a false peace. But here we have some videos we're going to watch.
Including this next person. You gotta watch
Let me
this. Last night I was at the Leander City
turn this
Council
up.
meeting where they were doing a Pride Month proclamation. And there were some people who gave citizen comments that were just, they were just evil. No bones about it. But there were also heroes, including this next person. Watch this.
My name is Stephanie Reyes-Rand, and I'm here as an 8th generation Texan, a mother, a commissioner for the Leander Public Arts and Culture Commission. And I'm here to celebrate pride and recognition of the many contributions that the LGBTQ community has made to art and culture at the local, state, national, and global level. The opposite of pride is shame. And it seems that many people would rather people in the LGBTQ community live in shame of who they are. And I find it ironic that those coming up and spewing their Christian values forget Christian values have no place in our government. This is a community made of people observing laws, and those laws include the rights to live how you want. I'll also remind you, every one of you, that you all represent the LGBTQ community. You don't have the luxury of just representing white nationalists or heterosexual people. You have the responsibility to represent the rights of all people in Leander. And if you cannot stand with those in proclamation today, then you have to question your ability of whether you're sincere in your leadership if you cannot lead all people of Leander. I find it sad that those coming up here and spewing hate in the name of God forget that the filthiest parts of their bodies are their mouths, and the hate that they're spewing and shaming people. And I wonder if they would have the indecency and the lack of truth to go up to a gay person and shame them to their faces. Because I feel like they come up here and they're really happy to promote their hatred and their agenda, feeling like celebrating people in our community is pushing it in their face. Yet they come and push their agendas in our face. These false Christian values that have nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. Jesus hung out with the freaks. Jesus hung out with the people who were marginalized. Jesus didn't embrace those standing at the front of the temple. He stood with those that were cast out. And so when they come up here and use the name of Jesus to promote hate and viciousness towards the LGBTQ community, what they're basically saying is, I hate you too. Now they can come and argue that I don't have to like you, but that doesn't mean I hate you. But when you don't recognize them as having a right to be proud of who they are, what you're telling them is they have every right to live in shame. And I don't think that's right. None of us should hide our heads in shame. Not the Christians, not the gays, not the Black Americans in our community, not the Mexican Americans. We all have a right to live in peace, and we all have a right to be celebrated. And I would really like to say to the man who investigated sexual abuse, trying to tie his sexual abuse investigations to the LGBTQ community, as a trained child sexual abuse educator, the majority of sexual abuse predators are cisgendered, middle-aged white men. So I resent the implication that because you are gay, you are a predator. The predators are not the people we think they are. They're the people sitting next to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The woman was at a Leander, Texas City Council meeting. And she spoke facts. Jesus flipped over the changemaker tables in the temple. You know, he didn't embrace the rich and powerful. He said, this is a house of God. Your greed does not belong here. You know, this is supposed to be about love for all. But we seem to have trouble remembering that for some reason. Okay, here's another video. This one is Ohio Republicans are trying to ban DEI programs, diversity, equality, and inclusion. I was trying to think of the word. Programs in colleges and universities. And Ohio Senator Cyrano gets questioned about that bill. I don't think you should be trying to ban anything from colleges and universities. That is the time when they need to really be exposed the most. If you want to prevent it in high schools, in elementary schools, fine. I still say there's a need for some things in those halls of education, but when you're getting up in colleges and universities, that is adults. Quit being, hate mongers.
So who exactly is diversity, equity, and inclusion bad for?
I have no comment.
You have no comment on who diversity, equity, and inclusion is bad for when you decide to ban it in our schools?
I have no comment.
How do you expect a black professor to not take a stance against racism in their own class? You have no comment on that. Are you aware that under this bill that a professor could not legally take a stance against the Holocaust in their classroom? How do you feel about that? You have no comment on the bill that you supposedly wrote that you stole from other fascist states? So how do you just justify censoring the discussion of electoral politics after blatantly stealing Ohio's electoral maps?
Oh, that too.
Yeah, that too. The things that you did. The consequences of your actions. What do you have to say to the countless students already looking out of state for school because of your bill?
I have nothing to say to you, and I've said it already. And that's the way it's going to be.
You really haven't, Serino.
Senator Serino, if you don't mind.
Oh, actually, I prefer Jerry. Jerry, I'd like you to answer. Who exactly is diversity, equity, and inclusion bad for? Who does that harm in our state that you feel the need to ban it in our public universities? You have no comment. Doesn't that mean something to you that you have no comment to any of the questions that students are putting up to you while hundreds of students across the state are organizing against this? And you have the audacity to claim that we're being coerced against by our professors with no evidence because you just don't care?
Hey, don't get in my face. I made plenty of public comments on the bill. That's all.
And none of them have been to anyone's satisfaction.
Honestly, politicians need to be pressured like this. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with some of the crap they do. And when you push for hate and harm on individuals because they are different than you, you suck as a human being. Honestly, you do. This one, I just had to show this because, the dude was such an ass. If you don't like electric cars, don't get one. But he purposely gets out of his vehicle to unplug a charging electric vehicle. That's just being a jackass to be a jackass. It does nothing to him. But he can't stand the fact that somebody else is charging their electric vehicle. These little pansy ass morons like him. He needs shamed, honestly. Immensely. He needs to be shamed. Yeah. Just got out of his truck, decided, I'm going to unplug the charging car. Why, dude? What did that hurt you? Why? And finally, we're going to go look at a bit of space science news here. Apparently, there was recently discovered a new quasi-moon near Earth that has been traveling alongside the planet since 100 BC. It was recently identified as asteroid 2023 FW13 as a quasi-moon, meaning it's technically an asteroid, but it's in rotation, or it's in orbit around the Earth. Yeah, well, it's orbiting the Sun nearly in tandem with the Earth, so it's almost like it's orbiting the Earth itself. So yeah, that's the space rock is considered a quasi-moon or quasi-satellite, meaning it orbits the Sun in a similar time frame as Earth does, but is only slightly influenced by our planet's gravitational pull. It is estimated to be 50 feet in diameter, or 15 meters if you use metric, roughly equivalent to the size of 3 large SUVs parked bumper to bumper. During its orbit of the Sun, 2023 FW13 also circles Earth, coming within 9 million miles or 14 million kilometers of the planet. For comparison, the Moon has a diameter of 2,159 miles or 3,474 kilometers and comes within 226,000 miles or 364,000 kilometers of Earth at the closest point of its orbit. So yeah, 226,000 miles or 9 million. So this thing is immensely closer. Although it's just that it's going about the same speed as Earth, orbiting around the Sun. It was first observed in March by the Pan-STARRS Observatory, which is located atop the volcanic mountain Haleakala in Hawaii. The asteroid's existence was then confirmed by the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope in Hawaii and 2 observations in Arizona before being officially listed on April the 1st by the Minor Planet Center at the International Astronomical Union, a network of scientists responsible for designating new planets, moons, and other objects. So yeah, it's much closer than the Moon, but technically it just kind of orbits about the same speed as Earth around the Sun. That is interesting. But I'll go ahead and end this episode here. Thank you all for watching. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my sources in the description box below the video. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.